Three. Okay. This is Hiroshi Shive. I'm here on Hiroshi Shive Space Odyssey Network, and I'm joined by James Bond. And I just had like this little weird, and it's been mulling in my head, thought, and I thought there might be something that James Bond might share or at least have some insight on about different things that is not really discussed so much in the cryptocurrency space about, the attack vectors that could happen. Like people talk about shutting down exchanges or shutting down miners as a way to either halt cryptocurrency, deter people from using cryptocurrency, or going after people. And I was just thinking, what would happen to the community as a thought of Satoshi Nakamoto one day decided he would move one of his Satoshis out of his wallet? What would be the community's reaction? And then James brought up some other ideas about just certain countries or governments going after people within the cryptocurrency space to go after users instead of the machines. And so we decided we'd share our thoughts with you all, and you're free to comment and give us some input of your own. So let me go to my screen share here. So James, how much Bitcoin do you think Satoshi Nakamoto has?
Well, supposedly he has like 1 million or maybe even 2 million. I'm not sure. I don't ponder how much Bitcoin Satoshi Nakamoto has, but I think it's a lot. And you're right. People are definitely worried about how much, what would happen if Satoshi Nakamoto came back for whatever reason and start moving those coins around.
Yes. Here's one of the wallets. If you're fairly new to the cryptocurrency space, or maybe you came late in the game, when Bitcoin first started, it was extremely nascent. At first, Satoshi Nakamoto was the only person mining, and then I believe the second person was like Hal Finney, and I forget the other person. It was like 3 people, and then it spread out from 6 to 9, and so on and so forth. And there's actually a breakdown where within the first 3 months, Satoshi was doing like 95% of the mining, and then like month 4 was like 70, then it was like 6 months it was 50, and then by the end of the first year, I believe it was the client came out in 2009, he was only 5% of the mining power of Bitcoin, and the reward was 50 Bitcoins, if you can see right here where my mouse is going. And this is just one of these wallets, one of these 50 Bitcoin wallets that he mined using his CPU. Imagine that back in the day. And allegedly he has thousands of these wallets, and some say he has either up to 1 million Bitcoin, and some say less, around 300K. But say it's 1 million Bitcoin, 1 million out of 21 Bitcoin. What would, just from having one of these Bitcoins or a single Satoshi move, do you think that would affect the market? Do you think that would cause people to drop their Bitcoin because they worry that there might be a flood of this onto the marketplace, James? That's the concern that I hear all the time.
Yeah, I think it would be, because that's a lot of Bitcoins. That's a lot of money. And the fear is that Satoshi Nakamoto would cash out, essentially dump onto the market. And, we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is. We don't know if it's even a person, male or female, or if it's even a group of people. So if it was all of a sudden being moved, I'm pretty sure everybody would know about it. It'd be in the news all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And the immediate fear would be that Satoshi Nakamoto is going to dump the coins and drive the price down.
Now,
and so, yeah.
Well, dumping as in like a speculator dump, or is this dumping where he's cashing out? I mean, they're kind of 2 different things. There's those that, traders in essence dump their coins all the time in the marketplace. I mean, would his dump be considered like a repudiation for Bitcoin, or is it him just getting his money? I mean,
well, I don't think it really matters whether he wants his money or he doesn't believe in it. It's just the fact that now there's these 1 million coins that have been pretty much, a lot of people considered burnt, like unusable, because the fact that a lot of the idea is that since it hasn't been moved, the premise is that the keys have been lost. right? And so,
Okay.
so that if they haven't been lost and now they're available, that adds about 1 million coins possibly into circulation. So when you add more coins into circulation, the assumption is more supply equals less demand. So it would drive down the price.
You would
So
think
whether
because
he's cashing out for his personal reasons or whether cashing out because he doesn't believe in it, I don't think it matters. It's just the fact that there's a potential for more supply onto the market before there was, 1 million less, and that's, all has to do with supply and demand.
well, would any of these changes actually even take his coins? Because I know with these blockchain spies, and I know some exchanges are pretty diligent and stuff like that. Sometimes they find after the fact, or sometimes they're on it. Where there's been some hacks, and a couple exchanges have become aware, and they check through the chain, and they freeze those funds and wait for law enforcement, or they block that. I guess what the IP, or they block the access to their those addresses, and they won't allow them to, like, for example, shapeshift. I believe one of the ransomwares tried to cash out through shapeshift, and when they became aware, they blocked that address. Do you think there would be any exchange because these are known addresses that would even accept those coins?
I don't see why. I don't see why not. I mean, it's not like Satoshi Nakamoto is a drug lord or a criminal by any means. If anything, maybe those particular Bitcoins, if they could be traced back to Satoshi Nakamoto, perhaps they could be worth more in some sense. A lot of people do idolize, people in general, YouTubers or celebrities or political figures. And I guess in this space, there would be some people who may idolize Satoshi Nakamoto being the creator, and to have a link to the creator of Bitcoin by actually proving that your Bitcoin is somehow you could be traced back to Satoshi Nakamoto's wallet. I think people would be very willing to take his Bitcoins or Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin.
Do you think they would be of a higher value? Not only that, but these are coins that are direct mined, so there's no history until they actually move. All the history is that they've been mined to this one wallet.
Yeah, I think they would be more valuable because they were Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin in his wallet, wallet, and so if you can trace it back to that, and so who knows? Maybe it'll raise the value of those particular coins, but it doesn't change the fact that there is more supply. So overall, I think it may drive down the price, but in any case, it just may be just a phenomenon. People do like to idolize others, like I said, and so having his particular coin, I doubt anybody would reuse them. So they may be even more valuable. Just those subset of coins may be more valuable, but the rest of the coins that's been generated since then, maybe those would have a different kind of market price, and those probably would go down.
Yeah, but not only that, but look at the date. This is January 9th. It looks like 2:54 in the morning, I'm assuming, of 2009. I wonder if, if we're talking about, idols, if you look at like the sports market, or what is it? I just recently saw like what Leonardo da Vinci's painting, his artwork. The last private collector's item was going for $100 million plus in a Christie auction. Certain artworks even have a reputation for being known to be owned by certain people, and that increases its value versus the actual quality of the artwork. Would, like, the timestamp of a particular Bitcoin, like the closer you got to the Genesis block, would that even have increasing value? Given
Yes,
how geeky we get, where people are like, well, look at my little da-da.
Yeah, I think it would. I think it would if you were able to cryptographically prove that these Bitcoins came from closer and closer to the Genesis block, it's possible that you, as a private owner, could ask or demand a higher price. And so, although the maybe on exchanges, who knows? Let's just take current price about 5,000. Well, those are just regular Bitcoins, right? They're just being traded, speculated on, used, hodled, whatever, dumped. But as you can get closer and closer to prove you were closer to acquiring Bitcoins closer to the Genesis block, and also and obviously prove it. It wouldn't be hard. Just go ahead and just look on the blockchain, as you could just follow it through. You could probably demand a higher price.
Yeah, but how would you move it? And how often would these coins move before it diminishes like their value from the connection? Because you also have to pay the fee to move it, right? Like, would you put this directly into a hard wallet or a one dime stick, and that's what's getting passed around? So where there's only just like basically one hop moving from Satoshi Nakamoto's address to this one address and this one address only?
Well, that'd probably be the best way to maintain it, and as much as you can. It would whittle down. You probably wouldn't want to separate it. Well, maybe you do. Who knows? But I think the closer you get it to that mine block, probably as a collector's item, it's probably much more valuable. And you could probably open dime it, put it in a paper wallet or whatever, however you want to do. Open dime probably makes the most sense. And that way you could just pass it around without transferring or actually transferring the Bitcoins, and without compromising the private key. But a paper wallet or other means, that's possible. Although you would have some issues when you sold it, because somebody would have to transfer it, because the private keys has been exposed by two parties already. So open dime, that might this may be a case where open dime, if this ever happened, to preserve its I guess purity, in some sense.
Okay, well, I have a question for you, because everyone talks about if you don't control your private key, or if you expose your private key, pretty much you've lost control of your coins. Would you trust, like, for example, maybe Satoshi Nakamoto doesn't want to actually move the wallet coins itself? Maybe he's concerned about blockchain spies, exposing his IP or his location or something like that. And he somehow is able to maybe transmit the private key that controls the wallet. Would you trust that he would, again, access those coins? Or would you just move them immediately?
Well, it's the whole idea of Bitcoins that you don't have to trust anyone. And I would probably highly recommend moving the coins into your own private key, into your own wallet, that only you know the private key. Because, let's say Satoshi Nakamoto never moves them, but Satoshi Nakamoto gets compromised or gets hacked, and then all his private keys are exposed to someone else, and someone else moves them. So it'd probably be best that you acquire those Bitcoins into your own wallet, and you control the private keys.
Well, this is the price I would pay for one if I had the cash or fiat on hand. Is I probably pay double what the current price is just to have this particular coin, because I think that is how much demand to be so associated with Satoshi Nakamoto, to have a mined coin so early on, that it would be like a 10 grand coin. It wouldn't be a $5 grand coin. It would be 10. It would be double whatever the value, whatever the price is. Whenever
I think you're too low.
You think I'm too low?
Yeah, because we kind of already know that Bitcoin halves, the emission rate halves every 4 years.
Okay.
And so I expect regular Bitcoins to be worth, tens of thousands of dollars, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in the future.
Okay.
So if you had this right now
Mm-hmm.
and you were going to try to sell it, I would ask at least 100 times more, maybe even 1,000 times more, because of how unique this particular coin is
Mm-hmm.
versus all the other coins. So uh, I would ask for a much very high premium to these particular coins. Even at
And would
today's price, even if today's price is 5,000, I would ask for like 500,000 or maybe a million. Maybe even put up for an auction and see who's willing to bid
okay.
on these coins. And I think you can easily get 500 to $1 million on
And would that also
just on current prices, based
current
on five
prices
thousand
alone?
dollars being the current price. Yeah, and if in the future you could probably get even more as um, the halving continues, and most likely the price will also go up on just regular bitcoins.
And
So
would
you can
that
even get more as you if you just hold on to it just a little bit longer.
a little bit longer? And would that even include like
Or
the big Bitcoin Cash, the Bitcoin Gold, Segment 2x, and whatever potential? Because it's just not the Bitcoin anymore. It's like a bundled package of assets.
well, that's true. That's true. So that's just I was just talking about the Bitcoin. So
Yeah.
um, the Bitcoin is probably the most valuable because that was Satoshi Nakamoto's creation.
Mm-hmm.
All the other ones, it may go for a higher value, but I wouldn't put too much value into it.
Mm-hmm.
You could say it has value. It's a collectible because it came from Satoshi Nakamoto, and depending on how close you were to the Genesis block, it may have some value to it. And yes, you could probably, you know, get money, or you can even extract it. You can just move it away from uh, the Bitcoin right now, and then auction those off separately,
Mm-hmm.
and or one bundle package. So yeah, you can even ask even more,
Yeah.
even more for it because and if you think about it, they would also have all the other airdrop coins. I think Clams was a airdrop coin based on Bitcoin, and some of these other maybe I don't know if Byteball will actually you'll be able to get some airdrop from Byteball. I think that by then, um, you know, they'll be finished with their total supply. But essentially, you could, do Byteball. You could do not Byteball. No, it is Byteball.
Is it Byteball? I was
Yeah,
saying either
Byteball.
BitShares or Byteball.
No, yeah, it was Byteball and whatever other altcoins out there that needs you to have Bitcoin in order to get airdropped. And so, if they're still doing airdropped at that time, or if they were hard forked or something like that. So yeah, there's possibilities. I mean, those coins have not been moved since they've been mined. So you get all the forks and all the altcoins that offered you airdrops along those with the address associated to it.
That's that's just mind-boggling to me that you think it would go for that high of a price. I mean, you would have to hold
Well,
on
it's
to
a
it for.
piece of history.
Yeah.
It's a piece of history, especially with I guess I don't know how you could call them. I guess cypherpunks or maybe just internet people. I don't
Mm-hmm.
even know these days. I mean, it is a part of history, and as time goes on, people will look back on this, and this will probably be written in some textbook and some history book for someone to read because it is, in my opinion, revolutionary, and it's creating a movement, and that movement is slowly building around the world, and it even has countries talking about Bitcoin. So
Yes.
people's
Yeah. More and more countries are I'm seeing in the news legitimately, not like back channeling, but legitimately talking about Bitcoin. And this right here is actually the Genesis block. So not only do you have the initial 50 coins, but the coins that people also donated to, and still donate to apparently to Satoshi Nakamoto. I mean that right there
yeah,
is 10:15,
isn't that
5 o'clock.
interesting? Isn't it
Yeah.
interesting that people are actually burning their coins into this address? I'm not even sure uh, what's going on or why this is happening, but people are literally sending bitcoins to uh, that that first block for whatever reason.
Well, I know it's an ode, really, it's an homage, where people can say, you know, I sent money to Satoshi Nakamoto. So there's that cachet. But some people do it because they're like, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this dude. And maybe one day he'll collect his coins or whatever, and here's a little something from my pocket to his as appreciation, like a, you know, like an ode or an alms, if you will, or like those Buddhas where you put the for good luck, the pennies and the nickels. And I know, not meant to be insensitive. I know that has a significant meaning within the Buddha culture, but here in the States, we have a tendency to bastardize other cultures and do completely different things with it. And pretty much what it is most people, if you go to like certain restaurants, it's just people do it for good luck, like a wishing well, and no respect to the actual ritual itself.
You know,
Yeah,
what I find interesting is that
yes.
this was just this address was just um, uh, it wasn't doing anything until Craig Wright requested that someone, the BBC News reporter, send Bitcoin to this address, and ever since then, because he wasn't able to send it back out, proving that he couldn't prove he was Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah.
Ever since then, other people have been sending Bitcoins to that address. You could probably just go to the first one.
Oldest first?
Gosh, it's almost no, the oldest first. Yeah, let's see if there is an oldest first.
I clicked on it. Still filter. Hold on. Received.
How about receive? Yeah, let's.
And yeah, it's not going by the date. I do know for a while there, and maybe Craig White made it more popular again, that people were just doing it. And maybe it just died down for a bit because, you know, he wasn't moving his coins. But it seems like almost every day someone is sending him something. If you look at
Yeah,
these dates.
every day.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder if this is just a way to eventually draw Satoshi Nakamoto out, or it may be a way for a group of people. If it was a group of people, maybe they're increasing their payout, and it was a way just to get put more money into an address. So one day when they do come out, and they'll finally be like, "Aha! It was us. And now
It
we're
was
filthy
us.
rich."
Now yeah, they would be filthy rich.
It was a bunch of hackers who got together and essentially just are scamming other people to send to this address.
So the first donated amount was 2011-05-13 at 9 o'clock. The first Genesis block was 2009, January 3rd. So almost 2 years, a little and some change afterwards, someone decided to send 0.01 BTC to this address.
Okay.
How much 0.10 BTC?
Well, if you just click on the Bitcoins.
Box?
Yeah. It should click on it, and it should turn into US stuff.
$57.50.
Wow, look at 50 Bitcoins is $2,800,000.
Damn. Wow. And yeah, all sorts of different amounts, dollar amounts.
If you hover over it, it'll tell you how much it was during that time they sent it.
Okay, so 8 cents.
It was 8 cents. 8 cents turned to $57.
And I guess the first Genesis block, there is really no real first value.
Yeah. I guess there is no value on that. Yeah.
Yeah. 9 cents. Maybe someone sent a message. I don't know why that's the case. 2 cents. 3 cents. Wow, that's mind-boggling. I guess you can go all sorts of rabbit holes to figure out and look at the value of what Bitcoin was and what it is now. That is crazy. So total receive is $380,000 Okay. Final balance. So, whew. So you were talking about how this might be a way to lure out people, to lure out either a group of people that might be controlling this address or Satoshi Nakamoto himself. We talked previously before about uh, the ways that people might get, it's not being really talked about, the ways that the users can be attacked when it comes to cryptocurrency. Do you want to share with the group here?
Yeah, I guess we could look at at the technicals of maybe how Bitcoin can be disrupted.
Mm-hmm.
There's always people trying to disrupt Bitcoin on the technical side, and I think there was recently a Breaking Bitcoin conference in which a lot of people tried to do that and strengthen the overall system. So another thing that people always talk about is EMP blast, either from the sun or from nuclear detonation. I guess if we just focus on Bitcoin and not worry about the other risk, of an EMP blast or nuclear detonation.
Yeah.
Um,
No, never
it,
mind that radiation.
yeah, never mind the radiation or the other total complete chaos that would happen.
You got to worry
But
about your bits; they're gone.
yeah, I would let's just talk like EMP blast from the sun, let's say, because that's
Mm-hmm.
most people expect an EMP blast coming from the sun as a likely scenario. So it would only affect, I guess, half the world that's facing the sun. And so even if there was
Yes.
an EMP blast, it would not knock out the entire system. So it can actually rebuild. And so it wouldn't be total destructive. You wouldn't lose your Bitcoin. And the nature of how Bitcoin works, that there's a node and probably a miner all over the world, and you would just be able to repropagate when you reestablish a node or whenever you get your power back on. So that's not very threatening. A nuclear bomb, again, is even less threatening, although very damaging to the local area. But again, it's only local, unless even if even if the whole world, well, a couple scenarios. If it was a couple nuclear bombs or a dirty bomb, so to speak, then it would just be local in that area. If uh, if the nations just decided to blow all their wad into a nuclear bomb and just shoot at each other, um, the MP, even that wouldn't. I don't think that would even stop Bitcoin because it would just be in that local area. The worst part would probably be the fallout and the potential nuclear winter, and
Yeah.
then that might be an overall problem because then that might actually wipe out most of humanity. And then in that case, yes, Bitcoin would probably die. But then again, most people would die. So on the technical level, on the technology side, I think it's pretty robust. I'm not a developer or a programmer or computer scientist in any way, but I think the technology is designed in a way that it allows it to survive. So that brought me to my conclusion of, well, if you really want to destroy Bitcoin, like my last scenario about the nuclear winter, it's not the nuclear bombs that destroyed Bitcoin. It was the fallout and the nuclear winter that destroyed the users, which destroyed Bitcoin. No users, no Bitcoin. So my ultimate conclusion is, if you attack the users, you attack the people who use Bitcoin or are part of Bitcoin, the developers, the miners, the end users, the businesses. If you attack those groups, then you might have a chance of destroying Bitcoin.
Yeah, and you made me think about when we were kind of discussing this before about how you're saying because of how they might attack the users like they do political prisoners in certain countries. It made me think, looking at this node map, like if you look where all the nodes are, which in essence is kind of some of the significant activity in the space, you know, it's not very distributed across the globe. I mean, you have little, I guess, nodes here and there, but if you look, the closer, like for particular countries, the closer they are to a Western style nation is where you see, like for China here, it's off the coastlines, their major cities, closer to Korea, Japan, Thailand, right here, like Indonesia, Australia. But like for Russia here, you might can see why they're very hesitant, because it's in sectors of their country that's very heavily associated, at least somewhat a little bit culturally and economically, to the West. And maybe one of the attack vectors against uh, cryptocurrency in general is because it is a Western financial instrument, and maybe people are tired of that. Because if you have to think about colonization, like particularly Africa, even to some extent China, India, these are countries that had not had the best experience when dealing with the West, even currently now with the current banking system like the IMF and stuff like that. Would these continents, would these countries, China or Russia, because Russia wants to get away from being bullied financially from the West, would they even trust something like Bitcoin? Or is that why they're rolling their own?
When I look at that map, I'm thinking of two things. I think of the electricity grid and internet connectivity, and if you put those two maps, overlap them, that's probably where you're going to get the most concentration of nodes. And unfortunately, third world countries, second world countries don't have that infrastructure. And so if you look at the U.S., you'll see that it's a first world country. And if you look at the U.S. and you look at wireless service, power service, internet service, they make that same map as you see the nodes. Not as much though, but if you want to run a node, you have to have electricity, you have to have an internet connection, and you have to have some basic infrastructure to service that node. And that's what you're seeing, and also in Europe, and you'll see that same map essentially, and Japan and everything. And when you look at it, or how about this? If you take a satellite picture on the dark side of the Earth, and you'll see the lights light up in the city, you're going to see that same map, most likely.
Dark side.
So.
Of the Earth.
So like if you look at South America, Africa, and parts of Australia, you'll see a big dark empty spots, and that's how it really is. There's no infrastructure there, and so it may not have to do anything with political. It may not have to do with anything political. It's just where the power in the internet is, and those empty spots you see in China. Well, a lot of China is like uninhabitable.
Yeah, so like right here in the United Kingdom, you can see, as you were talking about, the lake map here.
Yeah, and so there's there's a lot of space that are just nothing, no power, no nothing, no electricity, no internet.
Wow, Switzerland is pretty dark. I guess that's the mountain. That makes sense. Italy, wow. Look at the concentration there of Italy. Up to the north, and then you have a swath right here, and it goes.
So power and the electricity only follow where people are. So that's where you're also going to find the nodes. And Russia, a lot of it's empty space. And Canada as well. Canada, most of the cities or inhabitants are along the borders of the U.S. There's nothing above that, really.
And here you have India, Pakistan, Nepal. Oh, poor little Nepal. It only has a couple little places. Okay, but what about like the skipping that it seems like the second and third world is doing, where they don't have the same type of infrastructure that we do, but they're going mobile. So they're on the internet, but they don't have the same, I guess you could say, redundancies with servers and desktops. what is that going to really do for the cryptocurrency space, where everyone talks about full nodes, full nodes, full nodes? I mean, would it be easier to attack those SVU users, those mobile users, where it makes it even harder for them to be able to adopt? Because if someone like China or Turkey can block WhatsApp, they definitely can block Bread Wallet.
I think this concept of going into like these third world countries is not practical, not right now anyway. It would have to be a centralized service where one entity may run the node and run the miners and run the service, and everyone else is just the end user. Very different than like the first world countries where you could run your own miner, you can run your own node, and that's the idea of it. That's because we have the infrastructure to do that. If you go out to Africa and these other places where there's no electricity, there may be cell towers. There may be cell towers. You can get cell service or maybe even satellite service. But as far as electricity and high-speed internet, that may not be available, but there could be a centralized service that is able to provide that and then offer their service to the end user. So in those situations, that's going to be the case in those third world countries, because again, it's not a restriction of a desire to do these things. It's a restriction of infrastructure.
So you think
that's going to be the challenge.
Do you think something like a Coinbase setup, which might actually kind of go away up here with atomic swaps and decentralized exchanges, would really fit in down in somewhere like, let's find the map, where did Africa go? The continent of Africa. I saw Ghana. Well, Sudan or Russia, but Nigeria and Cameroon. I know Nigeria.
Yeah, you see, like a lot of that space is just empty for the size of that continent. It's just, like I said, very little infrastructure. Either it's just desert, mountain, or just empty, just heavy forestation. So it's hard to have build a civilization there in those conditions.
Plus, everything is basically just along the coastline. The development of it, their economies is based.
Well, it offers ports, fishing.
Yeah.
Importing, exporting. So there's some economic activity that's available along the seaboard or the coastal line.
And then, like as you said,
so nodes can only be run where there's people, and so when you look at the map of nodes, most likely it's probably because there's civilization there, or a decent civilization, and there's a person running it, and that's because they have, again, electricity and internet. So it may not have to do anything with the country per se, but a country can make it very restrictive because you got to get the mining equipment. And so as far as Bitcoin, getting mining equipment from China may not be that easy. It may be very difficult. So most likely, if they do mine like they do in Venezuela, they'll mine altcoins. And what essentially they're doing in Venezuela is they may be mining Bitcoin with Bitcoin miners, but I have a feeling they're really mining just any altcoin that is the most profitable at that time, and then they're dumping those to buy Bitcoin, and that's how they're getting their Bitcoin.
And because of the infrastructure of Venezuela, they have just like China, they have the subsidized electricity, and so it's easier for them to start up than say here in the States or in Europe to some extent. Plus, I bet their climate is a little much better for mining. I imagine.
I don't know. It seems like mining generates heat, so I'm not sure if it's beneficial. But they do get if they get subsidized electricity, and all it takes is just for you to run a computer, and then you're able to get usable money that you can supposedly get food. You know, if that's their option, then I guess that's their option. I mean, I don't think it's a matter of choice. It's a matter of need in Venezuela. If you ask me, like in the first world countries, U.S., Europe, Britain, where you see the map nodes, even Australia, I think this is a matter of choice. You're choosing not to participate in the incumbent system and choosing to participate in this cryptocurrency experiment. And it's luxury for us, just like most first world countries, even the poorest of the poor. You know, we still have some luxuries versus a third world country where, you know, there, you know, very little infrastructure, but the politics and the economy is not great, and cryptocurrencies may be a need, possibly a need, if you can, again, get the services. If you can get the electricity, you can get the internet.
Well, do you think cryptocurrencies would compel the need? Because at least here, even though it's a luxury, there's people kind of thinking in development as far as like, you know, the hardware wallets, trying to build better nodes, better miners. Would this compel if cryptocurrency were to be kind of, I wouldn't say hit mainstream, but have such a foothold within the overall global financial structure that these other countries will start investing, at least in their already existing infrastructure and the places that they're already at, to have a better internet or a better electrical grid to some extent? Would that incentivize the world, you know, lighting up?
Well, I think one of the reasons why they are third world countries is because unfortunately they don't have resources, or if they do have resources, those are being exported out, and they're not receiving the benefits of their own resource. And so whether it's through the IMF or maybe their own doing, the lack of reinvestment into their own land could be a reason. Political disruptions, who knows? Or maybe it's the way they run their government. You know, for whatever reasons, they don't have that infrastructure, or it may be their system that they're using, their political system which they're using, that has hampered development in their country. So whether it's good or bad, who knows? So far, the countries that have benefited has been, you know, America, Europe, which we consider the first world countries, because they're benefiting there's benefit financially. There's been some drive either through borrowing or you know, their current fiat system, or their exporting, or their use of technology they're taking advantage of. With these other countries, not so much, for whatever the reason. And I would suspect it has a lot to do with their resources that they have available to them, either knowledge or actual resources, whether it be oil, diamonds, you know, forestry, farming. There's a lack of resource in that regard, or there's a lack of human resources, as in education, technology, and you know, just the know-how and expertise of whatever they specialize in. So as long as there's a difference in that, there's going to be a wider gap that's going to be separated. Uh, if anything, the first world countries will probably most likely massively develop Bitcoin, if Bitcoin's the one, or whatever cryptocurrency that comes out. And only then will it seep into second world and third world countries as they slowly develop themselves, you know, up to date, at least have power and internet. or wireless technology.
But you don't think that some of this, like we see with like the smartphones, like as soon as pretty much everyone kind of chooses to upgrade, that secondhand phone makes its way to the third world. You don't see that might potentially happen with like Bitcoin mining or just certain components of the internet infrastructure, because you're kind of seeing some develop, at least here in the first world, of trying to develop a mesh network or wireless. Or at least I saw something about a year back where Google wanted to, in rural areas, put wireless routers on top of telephone lines, and use a wireless mesh network to reach those areas that cable networks refuse to go to, or fiber networks refuse to go to because they don't have to, and they deem it uneconomical. So most of those places are stuck on dial-up or getting their stuff from satellite. You don't think this might happen sooner, the acceleration sooner, because just the way technology evolves?
Well, they have to eventually, even if they had built a wireless network, they have to eventually go to a hard line to maximize, I guess, speed. So, you're gonna. I think you're gonna have to have that at least someplace to be hardwired that goes to a wireless mesh network. The advantage of a third world country is that it is fertile ground.
Yeah.
And so they're able to leapfrog against first world countries, because first world countries will already have invested in the infrastructure and is already working with that infrastructure, and in order to maintain its I guess power structure, as opposed to like a third world country where they may not necessarily need the infrastructure of a main line for being hardwired, but they could have a simple main line, and then everything built off of that be wireless, so they don't have to build out all the wiring per se. And in that sense, they could have more coverage, and it's possible with newer technologies, more efficient technologies, and faster technology that these third world countries can possibly leapfrog the current first world countries. But in order for them to do that, again, they need to grow. They need to have the resources to do that. They also need to have the human resources to do that as well. And so most likely that money is, they either are going to have to generate that themselves, or it's going to have to come from outside of their country, in which, unfortunately, if you see what the IMF does or any other World Bank does, they go in and they just loan money to these third world countries, and then they contract the infrastructure work to companies that they want to do the work in order to get the loan. And so none of the money really ever goes to the people of that country. It just goes out again, outside of that country, and they end up paying more to get the work done. And that's one of the reasons why they're impoverished. And that's why they're like the third world countries.
Yeah, and I see cryptocurrency as a counterpoint to that type of basically mob sharking that's going on there. But I also see like things like where China is coming heavily into Africa, and they're, I guess, participating in a, I wouldn't say colonialistic, but it's kind of colonialistic way, where they're coming in and they're doing their partnerships and stuff, and it's a better deal than the IMF. But I'm not sure if it will bring the type of economic freedoms that some of these governments are seeking as a counterpoint to what the West has done with their exploitation. And given that China has experience and they're trying in some of these parts build their, like, the cities, would they like straight up just go straight smart city in their build up? I mean, that would be fascinating and interesting to see what that would do as a shift. I haven't seen too much information on that, but it's just, I see the promise of cryptocurrency. I want everyone to be involved, but there's so many hurdles I don't think people fully realize that it has to be overcome. And that so many people are going to, once again, be left behind. And it might not be intentional on the part of the cryptocurrency space.
Are you talking about in Bitcoin in particular, or just cryptocurrency overall?
I see it as a whole, Bitcoin in particular, because while Bitcoin is dominant now, it's the first chain, the biggest chain, has the greatest network effect, it doesn't mean it's going to be that, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. I mean, there could be something new that comes along. I just mean as a whole, the cryptocurrency space, even with the problems Ethereum has with smart contracts. These privacy coins are coming up that people are interested in, or whatever type of coin that could be developed, or token, or whatever that comes into fruition. I mean, this entire space started with Bitcoin, but it's evolved a little bit beyond Bitcoin and will continue to evolve. And if you think of it, all of it is just one financial new infrastructure. It's still heavily concentrated in the Western and first world space. It has the promise for everybody. We talk about it being a global thing, but can we reach those across these old infrastructure barriers to reach that global market for real? Are we not thinking broad enough? Are we not thinking deep enough or flexible in our thinking? Or is this not possible?
I think it is possible. It just has to be done a certain way, or a different way than some of the first world countries. So, you may not be able to run a node, but if there's enough nodes that will help maintain the network, I wouldn't say not everybody has to run a node, because I don't run a node, because eventually I'm just the end user. So to be an end user, you may not have to run the node. You just have to have the ability to use your private keys. And in that case, there's satellite service. There are, what you said, mesh networks. So you may not be able to, there are satellite services right now that Blockstream is using, where you can only, receive information. You can't upload information, but you can still use coins. You can still use your Bitcoin in that way. So you could receive payments and know that you've been received payments, and you could be in the middle of nowhere. And, you could be in a farm somewhere, whether you're growing poppy seed, marijuana seed, or coca leaves, or corn, or wheat, you know that you've been receiving payments for your product. And you could, based on that, you know that you need X amount of whatever crop that you're planting or you're farming. You can, plan for it. So in that way, that's just an example that I'm mentioning. Other than that, I mean, the being a node may not be necessary for everybody, although the option is there for you if you have the infrastructure to support that node and your mining rig, if you want to mine as well. But as far as being a user, I think it's possible you could be a user in any country, as long as you have access to electricity and some kind of internet connection.
See, I think what people don't realize, because I've run a node. I run a node for Dogecoin. I run a node for Bitcoin for a little bit, and I've run a node for Litecoin. It's a pain in the ass. It really is. You have to basically sacrifice a desktop to run that node, because you can't really do anything else. You couldn't do Netflix. You couldn't do, you have to do very simple, like email, maybe something like that. And that's why I personally stopped running these things, is I had to use my desktop for other things. Also, like, if you don't have the best, I guess you could say, service, it can tap you out, the whole up and down transactions, to where other people within your home can't run something like Netflix. It's very resource intensive. And I don't think, while the infrastructure is there, the internet providers, the ISPs, seem to be very unwilling to unthrottle the internet in a sense. I mean, some of these caps are very artificial, what they're doing in a lot of places, where they're they're capping people as far as their usage of the internet. I don't know if that changes if you go to like a business account or something like that, where you don't have that experience, but then you're paying for a lot for the internet to
Right. They
run a
charge you
node.
more as a business.
Yeah, and there's really there honestly there is no mathematical reason for these ISPs to throttle people the way they do. And I don't know if there's any kind of change, considering that net neutrality is pretty much almost dead in the States, how that will do for, as an attack vector where you're going to have to be charged to transmit across the internet, the different tier systems that these cable or ISP providers want to do. What would that do for, the network that is Bitcoin? If there's different speed grades that people have to do to connect from one node to another. Given to,
Yeah, that is an issue because
yeah.
as an end user, if you're not going to participate either mining or running a node, you have to rely um, on a third party essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And if these third parties are able to control what you're able to do, then yeah, that is an issue, and that might be an attack vector. But as far as the throttling the internet service providers, that's been talked about for a while, and as far as I know, here in America, that's not something that's desirable because a lot of people do rely on the internet. It's almost like a utility instead of a luxury,
It should be.
because everything we do, it
Yeah.
relies on. I mean, I don't even have my phone is not. I haven't even used my phone in over, I don't know, years. I think maybe 10 years.
Yeah.
I've
I
used my
haven't
cell
had a.
phone
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I've used my voice over IP.
Mm-hmm.
My television, I don't even have cable anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I have cable for internet, but I don't have cable for TV because I have Netflix, and
Yeah.
my kids watch Netflix. I don't even watch TV anymore, so I
Yeah.
just watch all YouTube.
I experienced TV like a couple of years ago when I went to go back home and visit family, and it was during the Olympics, and I was so agitated because there were so many commercials. I mean, even when I go to like places that might have the TV on, I kind of just ignore it or whatever. But I had never experienced that bombardment of that many commercials because I watch Netflix. I have Amazon Prime. I watch YouTube. Yeah, there's some commercials on YouTube, but not to the extent that's on TV. Uh, I don't have a landline. I probably should get one just for emergency purposes, anyways, just in case something happens. But yeah, it should be regulated as a utility. It's kind of like water. It's kind of like power. It's kind of like gas. It is something you need or you have to have in order to function in the world. You can't get a job. Um, you can't get a job this day and age without an internet connection. You can't walk into any place, maybe except maybe some mom and pop place, and ask for a job application. They'll tell you to go to an address. They have like signs on their doors that says, if you want a job here, go to da 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 address and fill out a form, and maybe they'll call you back. There's not even really much of that whole old school meet and greet handshake kind of talk to the manager, talk your way into a job or something like that. You have to go through the internet system, and the way that things are structured, it can really hamper people in some cases where they have to go, they have to use their mobile devices and pin and peck or go to the library to use a desktop because they don't have a desktop anymore. They have
Yeah.
they have Xbox, and then you might have a keyboard so you can use Xbox, but Xbox, depending on which Xbox you have, maybe Xbox One's better. But I have a 360, which is just basically a glorified Netflix machine. Um, they haven't really updated their browsers in years for you to navigate the internet more flexibly, to actually, go onto a job site and fill out a form. So, yeah.
Right. Well, the one last thing I guess we can talk about is the social aspect of being a cryptocurrency user, and I think that might be another way to um, slow things down or even stop the use of cryptocurrencies. And there's different ways that can be done. Through social media, you can persecute cryptocurrency users. You could, paint them in a bad light, like they're all money launderers, drug dealers, or
Murders.
murderers, murder for hires.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to overthrow the government, stuff like that. So in that aspect, making this whole movement of being a cryptocurrency user, you could definitely hamper that just by, social engineering.
Remember that commercial? I forgot the name of the actress, but she was pretty big, like late '90s and early aughts, where she was in the kitchen and she was like, "This is your brain." It was like an egg. This is your brain on drugs, and just smash up the kitchen. What would
Yes, I saw
be
that.
Yeah? What would be the cryptocurrency equivalent of that type of social engineering that's scared? That I forgot when that came out, but I remember it like scared people. Like people were actually scared. Like, oh, that is what
Yeah,
drugs is like. Yeah.
yeah, and very similar to like the smoking commercials, and
Yes.
all those.
Yeah. The
Um,
Marlboro Man. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, well, you know, I don't think people run commercials for that, but I would say like some of the news articles that come out where anytime, especially around 2013 with the Silk Road,
Mm-hmm.
uh, things like that, where news comes out about, you know, Bitcoin's being used for money laundering, Bitcoin being used for the dark net markets, the ransomwares. That's probably another one that is, um, whether it's done by hackers or who are or state actors or just nefarious actors doing these things. But that tends to leave a very bad stigma with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general. And recently, these ICOs that come out,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people are seeing ICOs as scams. And so if ICOs are a part of the cryptocurrency space, then they'll associate that with Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, just any cryptocurrency as a scam. And so as more of these scams are prevalent and they use cryptocurrencies, uh, you know, that's going to really dissuade people from using them and joining this movement away from a centralized system of money. And so uh, some of that's already happening. Some of it is not has nothing to do with any nefarious state actor or any outside kind of force uh, you know causing this. Some of it is actually within this own community. When you look at this community and what it's produced, the greatest thing that some of these communities produce are nothing more than scams. And so when other people outside of this space look at this space, sometimes we are our own worst enemy as well. How we show ourselves or how the outside world may look at the crypto space, and all they're seeing is the Ponzi's and the pyramids. That also is an issue as well. So it may
Yeah,
not
your big
it may not
mix of
take
legal
too much.
coins out there that are popularizing this certain type of how to get into the cryptocurrency space. And I'll give them some credit. They make it very easy for people to get to use their system. Much more, much easier than buying Bitcoin and going from there. And I think that's really our fault within the cryptocurrency space that even today, almost, what is it? Next year will be 9 years in, 8 years in, almost 2009. So almost, yeah, 9 years in, that we still
Yes.
haven't made it easy. We haven't made it 1, 2, 3 for people to get their hands on crypto. And I know Coinbase, I guess last weekend, activated their instant buy option that helped drive the price. But it's still not that easy, and it's not all wallets or exchanges that have that instant buy or the backing to support instant buy. And so that's why a lot of these scams are able to be so pervasive and prevalent, is because they make it easy for people. They're like, oh, you want to do this? Well, here's the 1, 2, 3 step, and they run away with people's bitcoins or actual fiat money.
Yeah, well, the other problem is that a lot of people who aren't in this space, or they're not familiar with how cryptocurrencies work, they may not be ready ultimately, because you want to make it. The reason why the scammers make it easy is because they want to take your money. And with Coinbase and these other sites that allow you to purchase coins, they act as administrators, and they're the only barrier for the new people that are coming in. That they're the only ones that are protecting them against scammers, because it's so easy just to send your money someplace and you'll never see it again, and it's gone. And so when a lot of people aren't used to this idea of essentially becoming your own bank, because when you become your own bank, if you could have just imagined, if you're new and you're not used to this, to cryptocurrency, it'd be like if you all of a sudden had to had $1 million in cash, and it's at your house, literally. That's what it's like owning cryptocurrency, if I could compare it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not physical. It's just you own a private key. You just have to protect the private key. There's nothing physical to hide, and I that's what I like about it. But if I had to compare it with something that is current, it would be like literally having millions of dollars in a bag in somewhere in your house or in your safe. That's what it's like owning cryptocurrency. So you wouldn't invite anybody into your house and tell them, hey, you see that safe? I hold $1 million in there.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say these things. But when it comes to cryptocurrency, people just all of a sudden now they want to tell everybody, hey, I got $1 billion in Bitcoin.
Yeah, we talk too much.
Look.
We
yeah,
do.
yeah.
We do talk too much. We talk about, our trades, I hold Bitcoin, or the amount of Bitcoin, show different types of wallets. We do talk too much. I was just recently thinking, as a run up of the price, was like at least here in the States, for those who are not stateside, we have a gun culture here. I think pretty much the world knows that. And smart gun owners don't tell people that they have guns. And there was a period of time, and I think it still goes on, where there were people that would go on Facebook and look for people that show pictures of them with their guns. And then because Facebook is a real identity thing, then they would go find out who they were. And then they would, sometimes through these groups, and then they would look and see where they live, and then they would go and rob them of their guns. Why? Because they knew you had guns. And here you have is a lot of people that are talking about the cryptocurrency space, talking about the type of Bitcoins they have, or the Litecoins, or the coins they have, and they have their phone wallets, SIM attack, social engineering attack by going through Verizon and getting access to your phone and cloning it and taking all your coins out of exchanges. We really need to stop doing that. But I was going to go somewhere with that, and then I lost my train of thought. But yeah, we kind of need to stop talking. We got to kind of. There's a lot about the gun culture that I like and a lot I don't like about it. But we're going to need to take a cue from the gun culture, where we don't talk about even having it. We're here. We have to have kind of like a second layered identity, where we really don't talk about it that much, and we don't get really specific or anything about it, to where you don't even really know if that person has coins or not. To safeguard people, because I imagine pretty soon you're going to start hearing, especially around, I would say before the forking, but just around the holidays, where people are not as vigilant because they're thinking of the holiday and they're going and they're traveling. You're going to start seeing a lot more robberies.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with talking about cryptocurrencies and all that, but my point was that's what it's like. That's what the mentality you have to have. It's like, you're all of a sudden you're responsible for your own money. The bank's not responsible. Coinbase isn't responsible. Well, they are, but when you get into cryptocurrency, and in particular Bitcoin, owning your private keys and having control of those private keys is the important aspect of having cryptocurrencies. And so once you understand how important that is, and making that transition from a third party controlling your money to now you controlling your money, that's a big step for a lot of these people. And the ease of use, it may help get people involved, but I think it also may give them a false sense of security in thinking that because they have this app on their phone, they're safe. And I keep seeing all these reports of how people get scammed, or people lose their Bitcoins, or people lose their coins, exchanges getting hacked, people getting hacked on their exchanges, and just all sorts of things. And it all has to do with one thing, is that they never had control of their private keys. They never had control of the coins in the first place, because they were somewhere else with a third party. And so that's the danger and the false security I think a lot of people have when they get into this space. And in reality, they should be either, if they need to buy hardware wallets because they're unable to, understand how to generate private keys and how to generate wallets for themselves, then fine, then do that at minimum. And whatever you do, don't leave your coins on exchanges. And it's hard for people to do that because they want to trade and they don't want the value to go down. And that's one of the pitfalls that I ran into when I first got in. I was thinking, I'll just put my coins on exchanges and I'll trade them. I'll cash them out and I'll leave it in US dollars, and then when I come back and I'm ready to trade, I'll start buying up coins and doing whatever and then cash them out. The only problem is when you cash out on the exchanges, you have to realize that's not money on those exchanges. That's just a number that you're looking at on your computer. That is not money. But when it comes to the coins that you have, as long as you can withdraw it, that's real. The money, maybe not real. Whether it's tethers, not usable. Bitcoin, more specifically Bitcoin, that's usable because you can essentially use it to purchase things. You can barter. You can trade for your local currency and then use your local currency. These are the kind of things that I think a lot of new people don't consider, and they should consider, because if they really understood why they're in this space, it should be because you control your money and nobody else does.
I have a question for you, James. I think we're pretty much around the same age. Did you ever carry a lot of cash on you when you got your first job, or just have money? Have you ever carried, I would say, anywhere up to close to maybe a paycheck of cash? Like you cashed your check, you didn't have a bank account.
Actually, I never used to carry cash on me.
Okay.
I never used to carry cash on me. I had a bank account, and I would just put it in the bank. I thought that was very natural. That was the normal thing to do. I did that. Now I can't even get a bank account anymore. Now that I got into Bitcoin, I can't even get a bank account anymore.
Wow.
And the one I have, it's like an obscure small community bank. No major bank or regional bank will accept me as a customer. And so ever since I got into Bitcoin, it's almost like I've been ostracized from the banking system.
Okay, well,
and to some degree the credit card system as well.
Well, the reason why I say that is because when I started out, I did initially went and got a bank account because I was 16 when I got a job, and my parents made me do it. And then I was I wasn't really making that much of money, and I was paying rent and stuff like that, and wasn't holding more than like maybe $100 or whatever, maybe a couple $100 in the bank account. I said it didn't seem that worth it to maintain with the fees and stuff like that. So I stopped maintaining a bank account and just go straight cash. And so I had to learn, and I've always dealt with cash. I had to learn how to secure my cash funds, but also to carry the cash funds from cashing a check. And I'm wondering if there's a gap, because I think if you speak to an older person about maintaining cash, they know how to do it. They know not to carry an X amount of dollars because their wallet can get robbed, or keep amount of cash in their car or whatever, or on their persons, where to stash it in their home. Letting only certain people, like, the wife, this is the petty cash if there's an emergency or something like that, or the spouse. If people have been in, everything's gone so digital where they've really just gone straight third party and never actually handled their finances of paying their bills in cash or getting money orders and doing that process, that maybe that step, they went beyond that step, and because of that they don't really know how to secure their wealth. They don't know how to think in the sense of safes or backups, or keeping only an X amount of money on your web wallet that you keep in your mobile device, not keeping everything in one basket, spreading things out. And maybe that type of cultural learning is missing from this space, because we've all, and I'm still the same generation, but most people have just basically went straight to the bank account and went to debit and credit and don't really deal with cash at all. Don't touch cash. Rarely ever touch cash, period, unless there's some off-the-wall reason to touch cash. And I'm just wondering if that might have something to do with just the security culture within this space, where they don't really know how to handle security.
Yeah,
they've always dealt with third parties.
Yeah, I think so. Like, when I was growing up, bank accounts were free. They didn't charge you back then.
Well, yeah, there's free to open.
And they also gave you free checks.
They
gave you free checks.
Yes.
And so, and checks were like the thing. Now you just had to worry about bouncing checks and all that. But you can open. Yeah, you can open a bank account, and they didn't charge you. So that's one of the reasons. And then, and I never carried cash because you could get robbed. Mm-hmm. And if I wanted money, you would just go to the ATM and just grab a couple $100. If you
pull it out, yeah.
Yeah, pull it out. So there's some convenience and security in that sense, because I do think having cash it can be dangerous, because when I was younger, my mom was kind of that way. She would carry cash with her because she kind of grew up that way. Older than me, right? And there were no banks by then, or if there was, she was very old school. And then I remember we got robbed at gunpoint, and so that always stayed in my mind. We had a home invasion, and they tied us up. They put a gun to my head and everything, and it was a very scary experience. So there is risk, and at that time, we didn't have any guns either. We didn't think of that way, like for our security. And so now that I've have my own family and I have my own life, some of these things have affected me in a way where I do have guns, and now I have Bitcoins for some reason. You have to have a certain paranoid sense. I have been targeted because of who I am or how I look. So people have been targeting me, and then I noticed people also have been targeting me now that I'm into cryptocurrencies, and not by nefarious actors, but I also feel like even state actors have been targeting me. And so it's really a strange feeling, because before, I would never notice these things. And now, after I've decided to take on my personal safety and take on my personal control of I would say money, as in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, that all of a sudden things seem different. It's like I've been blind to everything, because of my ignorance. But once I became knowledgeable and educated, now I'm starting to see things, and part of it's a little bit of paranoia, but some of it's not. I mean, I've experienced things and seen things, and I can't deny these things happening. So it takes a certain type of person to be in this space. It really does. You just can't take someone who is totally ignorant of what's going on and expect them to all of a sudden open their eyes, and all of a sudden they know what to do. Most likely they're going to be victimized many times, or even leave this space and never come back.
Yeah, they're going to leave the space and never come back, and then they're going to tell up to 10 friends not to ever do this. It's a scam. You're going to get robbed. They're a bunch of con artists and stuff like that, and that in turn spreads, just like any kind of customer bad service thing with any type of business, and you lose people, and it's a bigger hurdle as more and more of those type of voices are out there to get people to onboard, to get people to trust this space. And we need to do better in calling out these scams. We need to be more vigilant or do our due diligence to onboard noobs in a proper way, to where they have a full understanding what it actually conceptually and in reality means to be your own bank. That there is no safety net. There's nobody coming to your rescue. There's no insurance. There's no paybacks. None of that. It's like cash. And if you've never dealt with cash, or you've never had cash, or ever been robbed, or ever dropped a wallet and lost it, or something like that, you have to kind of focus and focus people's attention on that. And maybe it makes them more aware of just the value of what it is they have in their hand. Because right now it seems that people are just kind of playing with it still. And then they get, I guess you could say, butthurt when they either get scammed or they get robbed, or they lose their money, or they lose their private keys, because they didn't do their due diligence. They didn't really treat it as something of actual value. Because if you have something of actual value, then you're copying your passwords multiple times. You're having your private keys in multiple places. You have enough redundancies that you can access your money at any point in time. And I don't know. I don't think we're doing enough to make people aware when they come on board. Even with Coinbase and a few of the other exchanges that are kind of custodials and administrators that helping noobs get on board, it's still like you can download it on your mobile wallet. And how many people out there that just became Coinbase users and bought Bitcoin have 1 or 2 Bitcoins on their mobile wallet? Do they have two-factor on? What happens if their phone gets robbed? Do they even have a passcode on their phone?
Yeah.
Silly stuff like that. I think about when I saw that instant buy thing. I'm wondering, how many of them realize that some banks don't even allow you to do that. Like, I think Chase is still very hard on cryptocurrency users. So you just went and bought instant buy through your account, and now your account gets shut down.
Yeah, that's happened. Like just linking your account to a Coinbase or an exchange could get your account shut down. And that's another way, I guess, to slow down or make it another attack vector is the on and off ramps. But essentially, if you want to get into this space, you don't really need an off and on ramp. It is a peer-to-peer network. You just have to find a miner or a person who has coins in which you could buy from. You don't need to go through your bank, essentially. And this technology, the purpose of this technology is to displace the banks and let you become the bank. And then, I think a lot of people don't understand that concept of becoming a bank. In other words, you're going to be able to make money off of your money instead of the bank making money off of your money. And so when you have control of your money and you actually become the bank, you'll be able to create as much money, fiat currency, as you want using these cryptocurrencies. You'll be able to hypothecate as many of these dollar bills as you want, and that's how you become wealthy. Not necessarily scamming people, but you become an actual bank, in other words. So you'll be able to, you know, play on the spreads of, I would say, your buying power, depending where you are. So depending where you are, you can arbitrage. And arbitrage is one of the greatest things that I think cryptocurrencies are very useful for. You have a purchasing power depending where you are, and you're able to arbitrage your purchasing power between two different locations instantaneously at the same time. So when you learn how to do that, you're able to gain value either through your cryptocurrency, or if you're trading on fiat, you can do that. But essentially, that's what the banks don't like about it. And that's why they want to cut you off out of their system, because essentially you're making most of the money. Before it'd be the other way around, where you're supplying them the money so they can make all the money. Now all of a sudden they're supplying you
with the money,
so you're making all the money. Yeah. So that's what cryptocurrency does. And you know, I don't think a lot of people are taking advantage of that, either because they're not quite understanding how they can use this to displace the banks. You know, they see it as a way of storing value, or avoiding taxes, or using it to, you know, use it for the dark net markets, or another use would be just be able to transfer money going across borders. Those are uses, but the ultimate use is really to benefit yourself, in which you can, you know, arbitrage on your purchasing power. And that's, for me, that's what I've experienced being the greatest use. And if you're able to utilize that and also become a part of what I would say the end user network, that's your greatest asset, you know. And what you're essentially doing is you're just displacing the use of a bank. So becoming your own bank literally has its meaning right from there.
Not only just becoming your own bank, but you're generating your own wealth in different fashions, and diversified fashions. You can think about it. If you're arbitraging with Bitcoin, you can arbitrage with Litecoin, you can arbitrage with Ethereum. And say if you do it just with the top, say, 10 coins, maybe the top 5 because they're most stable, and do that on a, not let's say daily basis, but a consistent basis, you are generating your own wealth from different types of streams. Different types of coins, if you will. And then you can go from there with all the different things you possibly potentially can generate just from your crypto.
Yeah, and here's the thing about it is you're generating wealth. You're extracting wealth from the old system into this new system. Mm-hmm. And Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies allow you to do that, but mostly Bitcoin because it has the most network effect and it's the most liquid out of all the coins out there. And so you don't have to do a pyramid. You don't have to do a Ponzi. Okay. And what makes me like sick to my stomach is to see people come into the space thinking that the way that they're going to make money, and it is a quick way. All right. It is a quick way, but it's not sustainable. So people come in with old world ideas into this new world crypto space with old world ideas of Ponzi's and pyramids. And they're not sustainable because they all have the same end result, which is a dead end. And that's what makes me sick, is that they're coming into this area with this technology with old ideas. And I know the result. Everyone knows the result. It's a dead end. So it kind of disappoints me in that regard, and that's why I'm a little, you know, harsh on people who come into the space with that mindset, because they don't add to it, they take away. and it hurts my investment and hurts, you know, what I'm doing. And, you know, if you do it the right way, you can do this to infinity, and it's sustainable as long as you're taking wealth from an old system here. You're just transferring wealth. When they talk about wealth transfer, the greatest, how do they say it? The greatest wealth transfer in the world is happening right now.
Yeah.
You know, you have to ask yourself, what are they talking about? What exactly are they talking about? Wealth transfers being the greatest wealth transfer is happening right now. Like, what wealth transfer is going on? Well, this is it right here. You're transferring wealth from an older system into a new system, and you're basically, how can I say, you're shaking up the system, and then whoever knows how to take advantage of this shakeup, of this, I guess, this shift, this pentagram shift or paradigm shift, those are the people who are going to end up with the wealth because they know what's going on. And that's what's happening right now. There's a paradigm shift going on in which, if you know how to take advantage of it in a sustainable way, literally it is possible to generate wealth to infinity. And, you know, if you can live forever, you could technically do this to infinity.
Yeah, you could do it for infinity, or until the universe
But
collapses.
you can pass it down. You definitely can pass this down to your children, and your children can take advantage of this if you're able to teach them. And so if they're able to learn how to use cryptocurrencies to arbitrage, which is, in my opinion, that's what's really happening. You're arbitraging between an old system and a new system, and you're extracting wealth from an old system into this system. That's why you see the price of Bitcoin going up all the time.
Yeah, and I think that as more and more people, I think you're starting to see some shift in people's thinking depending on when they on-ramped. I think if they on-ramped, I would say last year, you're starting to see the shift because, you know, in crypto, it's like dog years who've been in the battlefield for like a decade, it seems, 1 year in crypto. And so you're starting to see some of that shift. I think because of the price on ramp this year, there's so many new people in the space that have no idea what they're doing, that they're just bouncing off the walls, bouncing here and there, and either getting scammed, leaving their money on exchanges, and exchanges, you know, collapsing or getting shut down by the government in the case of BTCE, or losing it because they kept it on a mobile device or in an air gap place on their computer or some other reason. And or they're getting into stuff like BitConnect, Regal Coin, or some of these other type of scams that I'm not sure if it's shaping the space in the best light, especially with these ICOs. The on-ramp on the ICO movement, I think, happened at a very odd time in the cryptocurrency space. I think if this happened a couple years ago, maybe it wouldn't be so detrimental to the image of the cryptocurrency space, because there wouldn't be so much money being pumped in, and you would start seeing maybe legitimate products. But because there's so much money now, and people just, I guess, dumb money wants to spend, I don't think people are going to, the new people that are coming in now, I don't think they're going to be able to learn either fast enough or quick enough, or they're going to drop out altogether. And I don't know what that will do for the space or do for the price. If we'll see a sell-off because people are like, I don't want to do this anymore. And they're like just taking their profit. And maybe that's why we're hitting so many different types of price walls. Is there's so many people that are like, I can't do this anymore because they don't know how to interact with crypto.
Well, I think that's, believe it or not, I think that's good. I do have to admit, all the scamming, all these pyramids attract people into that whole scheme. And I'll be honest, it has been good because it's bumped up the price. All these people who pump and dump, they've actually helped increase the price of Bitcoin, because, you know, they're making the old bag holders full, in which they exit out into Bitcoin, realizing that they're wasting their time with these altcoins. And they may even made a little bit just a little bit more Bitcoin, or I wouldn't say Bitcoin. They made money, but they would have made more money if they just held on to their Bitcoin in the first place. And then they're bringing a
Not all
whole new group of
altcoins.
people of new bag holders, and then these new bag holders are essentially are going to do the same thing as the old bag holders. They're going to bring in even more new bag holders so they could be made full, and they'll learn their lesson, and eventually they'll go back into Bitcoin and realize the missed opportunities they had if they just held on to their Bitcoin and never even dealt with any of these altcoins. And so you're kind of seeing that now where the altcoins are still trending down, but Bitcoins are trending up. To some degree, Ethereum, but I think Ethereum is still trending down. It hasn't reached its all-time high. So you're seeing something happening where all-time high of Bitcoin is happening, but the other altcoins, they haven't even touched their all-time high. They're either halfway or a third way of their all-time high. So you're seeing a divergence in those prices that tells me that people are wising up. So the people who came in are starting to realize how the game is played, and they're leaving that altcoin market. And eventually, these people who don't get it, they're going to be left as a bag holder. And in the next wave that come in, of course, they're going to try to be made whole and bring in new bag holders. And that's a system that we've got here because it's been introduced by these old world scammers with these pyramid models and pyramid schemes and Ponzi schemes. And that's what they're doing. So, these people are running in circles on treadmill, just driving the price of Bitcoin up or even Ethereum. So, they have their purpose, and I think they've been tolerated because eventually what they do is they bring in more people with their scams. So I don't really mind. And the best way for someone to learn is that they have to just go experience this thing for themselves. You could probably warn people, you could probably tell people, but they don't listen because when you get into this space, when you first get into space, the greed really consumes you a lot because you see all these chances of making money and the I guess so. There's a lot of marketing going on of promises of riches and about beyond your wildest dreams, and claims of buying Lambos and all this other nonsense. It just attracts more people. But the people who leave, they probably shouldn't be in this space. But what I really like to see are the people who understand how things really are. Not only in this cryptocurrency space, but also in the incumbent system as well, and how that operates. And hopefully they'll stay, because those are the people that you really want to be in this space, because they'll make the space stronger. The people who aren't quite ready, they'll probably lose their money and then never come back and just, go back to their jobs of whatever they were doing before. And maybe at a later time, when they're ready to kind of have a better understanding, they'll come back and understand how the game is played here.
Yeah, I'm just going through the top 100, and I'm shocked how many of these are tokens that are up here overall.
Yeah, they're just tokens, right? They're non-mineable coins. You don't mine for them. They're just created out of thin air.
Yeah.
And that's actually been driving the price of Bitcoin. I believe that. So it's hard for me to bash them too much, although I have, because I know they're not sustainable in any way. They'll eventually lead to a dead end collapse, because there's only so many people that you can turn into a greater fool than you are. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of time, and a lot of them are trending downwards, and Bitcoin's has hit an all-time high, and it's actually holding its value. So
yeah, there's a lot of red in the market, a lot of red. And it seems the ones that are consistently staying green are the ones that at least have some kind of value, like some potential. I'm not sure about IOTA. I need to look more into it. I think I downloaded their paper. But yeah, there's a lot of red, a little bit of green, but not significant movement. Nice to see that Litecoin that was gone down is a little bit back up before that initial price drop. But yeah, I don't know. I think price is important, but I'm more focused on utility. Like, what does the coin have to offer? What can it do? And it seems some of these coins are just duplicates, and others don't really have any utility. And I don't know. I mean, I'm all for experimentation.
They're just speculation. They're mainly just to get new people to come in to spend their money, and their money's, they're given a token, and their money is being transferred on the coins that probably have some value to them or have some utility, and they're just being left as a bag holder essentially. So, is that going to kill the space? I think if anything, that's probably the most dangerous thing in this cryptocurrency space are these tokenized assets, and even hard forking and splitting. Those are probably the most dangerous things here, because those are short term and they don't result in anything. So long term sustainable growth is something that it's not talked about, but should be, because that's what's going to grow this space, not short-term, hype and, dreams of buying Lambo with your Bitcoin or whatever nonsense that people always talk about, because those are all short-term.
What color is your Lambo, James?
My Lambo's yellow.
Your Lambo's yellow. Mine is pink with a unicorn, and its hind legs is in the back where the gas pipe is, and it's shooting out stars and rainbows.
Well, those Lambos, they shoot out flames in the back sometimes.
Do they?
And they catch on fire.
And my Lambo will be only in the garage. It will never hit the streets ever, because I don't drive. It's just gonna be it's just gonna sit there looking pretty, and I can just say I have one.
Yeah, I guess so.
Kind of like those people that have baseballs, like with the names on them. It has value.
Well, to each their own. If that's something that they desire, that's just not me. I never had a passion for vehicles.
For a Lambo. I've always thought they were silly, even as a kid. Even when there was like a Hot Wheel version, it always looked like an ugly car to me. It just did, with this what's it called, suicide doors. It just looked ugly. It's like, I always thought there was better sports cars out there, but I guess that's the car that everyone is saying they're gonna get, because we all have to be the same.
Yeah, I guess so. But going back to like the extreme scenario of like what can really stop Bitcoin, in the extreme scenario of trying to stop, if somebody really wanted to stop Bitcoin, they would not only persecute Bitcoiners, but they would also kill them. Oh. And so if you think about early like religious movements, or early movements in different beliefs and different systems, those the early adopters were often killed.
Yes.
And so not that it would stop it, but it would heavily dissuade anybody from ever picking up any cryptocurrency and having this idea of controlling your own money. And that's just the extreme form of it. So that would eventually, not that it's been successful, unless you killed every Bitcoiner. So if you kill every Bitcoiner and there's no purpose of having any Bitcoins, then that's the way to literally kill Bitcoin. And will that ever happen? If we're talking about any possibility of anything happening, then that has to be considered as well. that, there could be a chance that the powers that be don't like this at all, don't like having individuals having sovereignty of their own money, and they're going to physically attack and physically kill users.
Well, I
And,
think they would.
it's not that crazy.
I think they would imprison them more, and I think it would be through the tax angle more than anything, by condemning them, because there's the meme of the concept that where murderers, drug dealers, and malicious hackers bent out to overthrow the government or something like that, or pedophiles for child pornography and something like that. And now we're non-taxpayers, so we're not paying our fair share, and we're absconding with the wealth of a nation or something like that, and they can start going through the blockchain and start going and like, why haven't you paid your taxes? I mean, that's the first the first shots fired was against Coinbase to try to get that tax information. I don't think that's the last time that's going to happen, but they're going to start doing that. They're going to start going through social media accounts, and they're going to start going through YouTubes and Bitcoin talk and us talking too much about what we're doing, and start putting real identities to people, much like they do on the drug trade with Facebook and Telegram and users' names in the darknet marketplace. And they're just going to come into somebody's house with I guess you can say, a merchant gun, and be like, we need to see your tax forms, but we also need to see what you have here, your assets, and start putting up seize asset lists and start putting people in prison. I don't know how they're going to get to the coins besides, using the $5 wrench thing to get people to give up their passwords. But maybe if they seize enough desktops or mobile devices or papers or 1.6 or hardware wallets, they'll get those coins, but they might not get everybody. I think that would be the first series of condemnations that could happen in this space. That's within the realm of probability, and that has happened before they start killing people.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be the first way to do it, and then the remaining who don't cooperate, resist, they'll just go and kill, either put them on a train and ship them somewhere. Yeah, SWAT raids or whatever. That's the extreme case, but it's not impossible, because if you just go through history, things like that have happened. You just round it up, and then you're killed in a shallow ditch. Ethnic cleansing is a form of doing that, or religious cleansing. Just different forms, and these things have happened.
These things are happening now. I mean,
and some of these things are happening now in some parts of this world, in some country. Yeah,
Malaysia, Syria, Sudan still, Nigeria to some extent with Boko Haram. It's still happening, and it's not within the realm of probability or possibility. I mean, tax rates happen all the time. They do have a tendency to get violent. SWAT teams going into people's homes. Stuff happens all the time with that. And when you're facing 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and all you have to do is give up your coin, and you only have to serve 7, and you might actually get to see your family, you're going to do that. Not everyone's going to hold out. Not everyone wants to be a martyr to the cause.
Well, I know one thing is if you want people to stop using their coins, and only they know the private keys.
Yeah.
Well, if you kill them, there goes your coins. Yeah. And so you won't have any users. It's a dead project right away. So there's always that extreme case. Will it ever happen? I don't know. There's a lot of people that use Bitcoin now all over the world. So that'd be a lot of people you would have to kill.
It would be, but they've tried that. They're trying that in the Philippines right now with going after drug dealers. That's the biggest analogy I can have for this space as an attack vector is the war on drugs. And that is not successful. That's proven not to be successful. I mean, look how many states now are looking to actually just legalize all drugs altogether. I just recently saw a story about Spain and how the drop of their drug usage or overdoses has significantly dropped since they've been, was it 20 years now since they said all drugs are legal in their country. And now marijuana is it was always pervasive, but now it's legal. Is Bitcoin the next, I guess, because the drug market, I guess, or the war on drugs, the tapping of that market for, seizing property and seizing funds from people, is they tapped out? Is that the next means of funding the government? I mean, in essence, it could be quite profitable, but will it even work?
Well, seizing Bitcoins?
Yeah.
Well,
like this is your... Yeah, just think about it. Like, they seize people's assets when they're either drug dealers or drug users. Their cars, their homes, even for little amounts, they do that. Or, the cash that they might have on hand.
Well, with Bitcoin, it's kind of difficult, because unless you give up your private keys, which if you don't want to, they'll never get it. So you'll just end up serving a very long period of time.
They'll take your home. They'll take your cars. They'll take your businesses. They'll take your computers and all your other assets. So they might not get your coins, but they'll get everything else. And
yeah, they'll get everything else.
Now you're homeless. Now, if you're, have a significant other and children, they are homeless. They don't have clothes on their backs. They don't have means because accounts have been shut down, like your fiat accounts. So you're going to have to tap into that crypto if you can to support your family. And when you do that, then the government can get you even for more time, or go after your spouse for having access to those funds.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, in a situation where you're oppressed that much, yeah, eventually, if you don't want to enrich the state, you could just sell everything you have, which I heard someone sold everything that they had and bought some Bitcoin. I don't know how true that story is, but eventually, I guess that's what you can do. You could just sell everything you have and just go crypto, and there you go. You'll never have to give up, worry about your money getting seized. It's all in your head.
Yeah, but then there's always people around you. There's always ways the government can get to you. They'll go after your moms. They'll go after your sister. They'll go after somebody in your life. Nobody walks this earth alone, really. And so it just is a matter of how committed you are. Because it's clear that the government's more committed than you are, really, if you think about it. If the full weight of the government came onto this space, a lot of people are going to fold. Because it's easy to talk the talk. It's a totally different thing to walk the walk. But we have been talking for 90 minutes now.
Yes, we talk for a long time here.
Yes, we do talk for a long time here. I'm going to share, just kind of end it out, that old 80s commercial. It doesn't have the actress in it, but it's the one that really stuck with people's mind. And it did scare America. I don't know if this scared America more, this or that one miniseries movie that was about nukes hitting America. It was like the day after tomorrow or something like that. That really scared people. Yes, television actually used to frighten people, like legitimately frighten people. People used to, you hear that story about the War of the Worlds with what's his name? Orson Welles.
H.G. Wells.
The H.G. Wells story, but Orson Welles did the radio play, and there was actually legitimately people that thought Martians had landed on the planet and were invading New Jersey. Well, there were still points in American consciousness where you could put a television program or a commercial, and you can literally frighten middle of America or most of America into a certain concept or behavior. And I think this was like the last waves of that, is this type of a commercial here. And hopefully the audio will play for everybody. Let's see. I'm not hearing it. Let's see if I can fix that. Oh, there we go. Let me go back to that. So there you go. I want to thank you, James. Hold on. I want to thank you, James, for coming down to this live stream and having this little thought exercise experiment about what could potentially happen to the cryptocurrency space if these events happen. I'd like to thank everybody for entertaining us for this very long conversation, and I hope that you would join us either on James's channel or some other time here on the Roja Space Odyssey Network. James, do you want to tell people how they can find you?
Well, I'm a little hard to find, but if I'm only pretty much on YouTube, and let me see here. If you do a search on YouTube, James Bond Bitcoin Live, you'll see a lot of my live streams. I used to do a lot of Harbor Freight videos because my house was falling apart, and so I would try to buy some cheap tools to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm into cryptocurrencies, and I've been doing it for about three years, and I trade mostly peer to peer, and that's how I interact and participate in this ecosystem and in the space. I also do a lot of trolling. I troll other YouTubers, and sometimes they don't like it, but you see a lot of what I would say exaggerations and misleading channels out there about this space, and that's one of the reasons why I troll them, because it seems to be a lot of deception and also Ponzi's and pyramid schemes that go on. Again, stuff that they bring into this space. It's supposed to avoid all that, but I guess you just can't avoid human sociology in some ways, or psychology. Everyone's always trying to get rich. It's my belief that eventually, if you understand that money and cryptocurrencies are just used as a carrot on a stick to get you to do things, you kind of shed this idea of kind of what money is, and you begin to understand more about yourself than you do about anything else. So that's the only way you can find me, is James Bond Bitcoin Live. Subscribe to my channel. I do a meme show every day, and then on Sundays and Wednesdays, I go and do a live stream with Brian and Roja, if you want to participate, and some other people, a little bit longer, up to an hour to maybe 2 hours, where we just talk about crypto.
Okay. And there will be a link in the show notes to not only his channel, but his latest video attached to this one. I'd like to thank everybody who watched and listened and is going to continue, watch this on the replay. And until next time, to the moon, y'all.